Welcome and thank you for coming to our Peace Corps information session. We're really honored to be joined here today by two different professionals from Peace Corps and excited for them to share their stories. As a way of introduction, I'm Diana Grant-Davey and I'm the Assistant Director for Employer Relations within the Career Development Center. So my role involves overseeing employer relations and connecting employers with treks, info sessions, and other different opportunities to connect with you as students. So today, like I said, we have Rachel from Peace Corps and Sean, who's actually a USD alum, here to speak to you. I'll be able to tell you a bit more about the Peace Corps program and what that looks like, as well as share their own personal experiences. So we encourage you to continue to put questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and then there'll be a chance at the end for Q&A. You can either unmute yourself or continue to put those in the chat. If you're interested in Compass Connect and Passport points, then these will be awarded based on the Zoom attendance report. So nothing that you need to do as students, will be able to take care of that. But please be patient. It usually takes a couple days for those to go to your accounts, just so we can work that out on the back end. And we will be, as you put in the waiting room, we will be recording this event and posting this on the USD Career Development Center YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be included in the recording, then please feel free to keep your camera off. And then finally, we'll be sending a follow-up email later this week with links to future Peace Corps events, and Rachel and Sean have kindly agreed to share their contact information so that if you do have questions that you don't get to in this session, then you can follow up with them after. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rachel to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Diana, and hello, everyone. It is so great to be here and really excited to speak with you all today. I hope you are all able to kind of kick back and enjoy this lunch break here on a Tuesday noon. Again, my name is Rachel, and I am the recruiter for Peace Corps based here in San Diego. I have truly enjoyed working and talking with USD students. We've had a lot of students who have graduated from University of San Diego and have also become Peace Corps volunteers. And I'm also actually joined today by another return Peace Corps volunteer who's also a Torero alum, and his name is Sean. And Sean, if you want to just chime in real quick and for your intro.
Hey everybody, my name is Sean. I was a Torero for 2010 to 2014, and then I was a Peace Corps volunteer from 2015 to 2017.
Awesome. So good to see you here, Sean. And how we're going to do this event today, since we're only here together until 1 p.m. But the first 20 minutes or so, I'm going to walk through the presentation and really talk about the application process and just an overview of our Peace Corps projects. What is Peace Corps? Many of you may actually be the first time to even hear about Peace Corps, so we'll definitely set aside time talking about that. As Diana mentioned, just for the sake of time, if any of you do have any questions, please do utilize the chat box. And right after my presentation, I'll try to make sure I get to those. And then we'll also transition into a little bit of a Q&A moderated session with Sean as he speaks about his experiences as a Peace Corps volunteer. And also would love to have any of you all that have questions for him also utilize the chat box during that time. And I'll make sure to relay that to Sean. So with that said, let me go ahead and share my screen. Diana and Sean, can you see that all right in full screen mode?
Yep, that looks great.
Perfect. And actually, before I kick this off, I'm also going to put in the chat box here a check-in as an attendee form. For those of you who would like to stay connected with a recruiter, please do fill this out. Give me one moment here as there we go. All right. So again, welcome everyone. You're here for the Peace Corps info session, and I am also a return Peace Corps volunteer. So Sean and I actually make up close to 240,000 plus returned volunteers nationwide. I was a volunteer in Nepal 2015 to 2017. I was a health volunteer, so I got to work with a lot of different projects regarding hand washing, sanitation and hygiene projects, nutrition education as well. The language I learned and eventually spoke was Nepali. But here in the picture, you'll see just a view of the Himalayan mountains from my village. And perhaps many of you know, Nepal is known to have the highest mountain peak in the world, Mount Everest. This was really a special time period of my life. I did not do Peace Corps right out of college. It took me a while to join, but I learned so much about, cross-cultural interaction, professional development, working with people from a very diverse background, and truly had an amazing service. So really excited to really just talk about Peace Corps as well with regards to like personal and professional development with many of you all today. So many of you might be curious, what is Peace Corps? So Peace Corps, we are a government-run program where we send volunteers to communities abroad for a total of 27 months. We are serving in over 61 countries worldwide. Peace Corps has been alive and well running program since the 60s. So we actually just had our 60th anniversary on October 14th, which was when John F. Kennedy had announced this idea and vision of promoting world peace and friendship. And so really exciting is to know that over the course of the 60 years, there has been this agency such as Peace Corps where we really thrive on providing the skills in these village and in these rural communities to provide technical training and skills. But it's also very much a two-way street. Why I say that is because we only go where we are invited to serve. And so a lot of times in these host communities or the countries, there's a lot of that partnership experiences. Ministry of Health or Ministry of Education are the ones that are essentially working with State Department and their local embassies to say that they are in need of Peace Corps volunteers. So really the mission of Peace Corps here, you will see, is to promote world peace and friendship by fulfilling these three goals. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, is to help the people of interested countries in meeting their need for trained men and women. I would also include youth in here since we do have a sector working with youth. The first 27 months of Peace Corps is actually, there will be a time of training, which takes place within the first 3 months. So within the first 3 months of training, all volunteers will be trained on the cultural training, the technical training, as well as the language training. And then once you complete the 3 months of training, then you will be placed into what we call your permanent site, where that is where you will be working on these sustainable projects, capacity building, and relationship building. The last 2 points here to help promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of people served, and to help promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of Americans. It's quite a mouthful, but what it really essentially is really that cross-cultural interaction, sharing of cultures and knowledge. Sometimes in these Peace Corps communities, you may be the very first foreigner that they have come across or very first American. Because you are also there for that 2.5 years of your life, what better avenue do you have other than speaking upon your diverse narratives and background, sharing your culture and practices, as well as learning about their culture and practices as well. I learned so much about how Nepali people lived their daily life, what the festivals were like, getting dressed up in local Nepali clothes and cooking with my host family. So there's a lot of that cross-cultural interactions that also take place, which really forms what we know as Peace Corps as well. Just very quickly here, just to kind of give you an overview of our requirements. Really, the minimum requirement is to be a US citizen or a naturalized citizen and to be at least 18 years of age. Most volunteers, here you can see 95% of volunteers do have at least an undergraduate degree. We have also, worked with people who are military veterans or mid-year career professionals, and also kind of utilize their working experience as well to compensate for if they do not have a degree. But I understand for today's audience with a lot of our USD students, most of you all would most likely have a degree by the time you are applying if you are interested. So you're definitely in the right path with staying in college. As you can see here, we actually do not have an upper age limit. So we do have an age range from 20 years old to 86. I always like to tell people one of our oldest volunteers is actually an 86-year-old woman who has done Peace Corps 3 times. So she has been in 3 different countries and is just a guru. We love her. So again, if any of you have any aunties or uncles or grandparents that, you know, perhaps heard the JFK speech back in the 60s and want to join, please let them know. We're definitely interested in working with them. All right. So very briefly here, I do want to highlight the 6 sectors that volunteers work in. We have agriculture, youth and development, education, environment, health, and community economic development, also known as business. A lot of times I've worked with candidates who actually, you know, thought of Peace Corps as just working in education, which is definitely not the case. We have 6 different sectors. And even within this layout, I would say that we have had a bigger demand with education and health, but we definitely have some really high impact programs that take place with our 6 sectors as well. What I also do want to mention here is that there's definitely a project for everyone. I know a lot of times students have asked me, do I need a specific degree to become an education volunteer, or do I need to have classroom teaching experience, so on and so forth. There's some nuances to that, but mostly we take every and any major and discipline. What we really look out for is what your interests are and what type of volunteer, you know, community service projects that you may have been involved in, or what type of student-run organizations have you also taken part in to display your leadership skills. So there's definitely ways to highlight yourself as a candidate and apply your interest and background to any of our 6 sectors. Just for the sake of time, I won't be able to go too much in depth into these 6 sectors, but I will put in our website to link to show you exactly what type of projects our volunteers work in. The beauty of Peace Corps is also that there is a component for secondary projects. So while you are there as an agriculture volunteer, for example, if you are working with local farmers, but you are also interested in teaching English on the side, or perhaps you're interested in working with after-school clubs and organizations. If there's a community that is interested in working with you and that need, then you are most definitely encouraged to also utilize that avenue to do secondary projects as well. And I could definitely, if there's more questions on these sectors, you know, please do utilize the chat box. I'd be more than happy to dive more into that as well. So here's our beautiful map of where we serve and where our volunteers have served in. And you can kind of see here that it's just a beautiful list of countries. We have over 60 countries. For any of you who might be kind of looking at this and thinking, ooh, I really want to go here. Ooh, I really want to go there. You can definitely go on our website. We have a whole countries tab that will show you, you know, the culture in these specific countries, the day in the life as a volunteer. There's so many great blogs that also showcase volunteers who have served in each of these specific countries as well. So definitely encourage you to check out our website for this. One thing I do want to highlight here is that majority of our programs do not have a language requirement, except for the countries in Latin America and some of our countries in West Africa. So we do have, the Latin American countries will ask for candidates with intermediate background in Spanish language. And what I mean by this is that if you have taken at least 2 semesters of college level Spanish, or perhaps 4 years of high school Spanish within the last 8 years, you can utilize those. You'll just be asked to submit on your transcript and indicate that on your application. But you can also utilize those skills towards getting considered for a Latin America post as well. There's no need for you to also be a native or bilingual level speaker by the time you start service for, you know, a Spanish speaking post, for example, because as I mentioned earlier, within the first 3 months, you will definitely be getting trained with the language that you are there to learn. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we have plenty of programs that if you are actually maybe a Spanish speaker or a Romance language speaker and you want to learn a brand new language, you can also kind of craft out your plan to choose your Peace Corps projects as well. All right, so I do want to go over really quickly here the benefits during and after service. You might be asking yourself, all right, Rachel, the 27 months sounds good. It's kind of long though, but what's the catch, or what do I get in return of serving overseas for 2.5 years? As I mentioned earlier, because we are a government-run program, there is no cost associated with becoming a volunteer. Rather, all volunteers will be receiving a living stipend. And by that stipend, I mean it will be very much adjusted to the country that you're serving in and their living standards. Most of the time, a lot of our volunteers, month-to-month stipend can vary anywhere from $200 a month to $450 a month. But from there, the volunteers will get to pay their host family for food and rent, and also have enough remaining funds so that you can also do some shopping or travel a bit within the country. Housing is all going to be arranged prior to volunteers getting placed in their permanent site. A lot of times volunteers also get to experience 2 different host families, one during that pre-service training, as well as another host family for that remaining 2 years. All volunteers will get medical and dental coverage. This is a very great benefit, the student loan deferment. This was something I also took advantage in right after, even after those 3 years of graduating from college and considering Peace Corps. But all Peace Corps volunteers with any federal loans or private loans, you will not have to make any payments on that while you're in service. It's a great benefit. The other thing is that all volunteers will be receiving a vacation time. This actually is going to be pretty much 2 days a month that will get accrued after you complete your first 3 months of training. Altogether, it actually comes out to about 48 days of vacation time. So you can utilize that to come back home for the holidays, or perhaps your friends and family can come visit you when you are in your host country. Needless to say, Peace Corps has an immense capacity and opportunities for career skills and training. I think the old school knowledge of Peace Corps being that, you do the training in the 3 months, you're in a village and see you in 2 years. That is not the case anymore. I was also surprised by this. In Nepal, they actually had a lot of opportunities for Peace Corps volunteers to come into the capital and to also have what we called project and management training, grant writing workshops, ways to get involved in committees, and so on and so forth. Benefits after service, I'll be very quick here, but we do have close to $10,000 in transitional funds that will be provided to all returned Peace Corps volunteers after completion of that 27 months. Graduate school benefits, if any of you all here is interested in pursuing a higher education, whether that be a master's program or a PhD, we have over 200 schools partnership nationwide that provide a tuition discount, professional and networking and internship placement as well, with really any discipline ranging from master's in public health to a law degree, to an education degree, and so on and so forth. So that is a wonderful benefit. I know that University of San Diego is actually one of our partner program as well, with the Joan Kroc Institute for their international peace and conflict resolution. So if any of you want to go there, you can definitely check that out as well after doing your Peace Corps service. I do want to make sure I have enough time, but I do want to also highlight the federal employment advantages. This is another wonderful benefit. Right after you finish your service, you will have this, what we call non-competitive eligibility status for a whole year. What it essentially does is that when you apply for federal jobs, you will get a little bit of a bump up for having this non-competitive eligibility status. And it's just kind of an easier way to get into the hiring process of a federal job. So this will be available for all volunteers after their completion of service. I do want to make sure I have enough time. I'll just make sure to, if anybody has any questions on this, please do utilize the chat box. I could definitely talk more, but I do want to walk you all through how to serve for anybody who is interested. Okay. Actually, before I do this, let me talk a little bit more about COVID-19 updates as well, since I'm sure many of you may have questions on, what this all may look like going forward. So As of March 2020 this year, we had to evacuate all volunteers. So at the moment, all of our projects have been temporarily suspended. Although we are currently taking applications and we are hoping to re-enter these programs and these host communities either anywhere from mid to late 2021. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty and with the recent news about the vaccine as well. So we're really working a lot with our host country nationals and host country programs to kind of see what this might look like. We do really want to be mindful that with Peace Corps, we do put safety and health as a top priority on both the Peace Corps volunteers as well as the host country communities as well. So I do want to mention this, that we are definitely very hopeful. And with that said, we are looking at that tentative departure dates to take place from mid to late 2021. So if any of you here are graduating May of next year or even December next month, then I would definitely encourage you to check out our programs. And I'd be more than happy to walk you through the next steps as well. Anyone here who might be anywhere from freshman to a junior, you still have time as well. So at any time of the application, when you are looking to apply, give yourself about 6 to 9 months to, after submitting your application. That's about how long it takes to depart for our program. So essentially, you can start in the fall semester of your senior year and be ready by the time you graduate to depart. But let me walk you all through a little bit more of what that might look like. So at any time you're interested in applying, please do check out our website first. We have so many projects posted on our website. And there's so many great resources as well, so that you can all kind of craft up your application and do a little bit of research on the areas that you might be interested in, whether that be the sectors or the country specific information. As of now, again, another COVID-19 plug, we unfortunately had to take out the specific job listings and the countries only until we receive that green light from our host countries that are ready to open up. So what this pretty much means is that at any time you are on our volunteer openings page, it will show up as, for example, a food security advisor in Asia, or a business advising volunteer in Africa. So it is a little bit more of a zoomed out vision, but if you consider yourself a competitive candidate within that sector, and if you're really interested in that region, you can apply directly to that sector and the region. Another way that you can apply, which is the way that I've really encouraged applicants to do, is applying with Serve Where Needed Most. And that way you can actually still showcase yourself as a competitive candidate with flexible options saying, you would like to get considered for so-and-so regions and so-and-so sectors. So you can still indicate your preferences that way as well. Right after you submit your application, and I'm sorry, one more thing. At the time of the application, there are 3 different items that you will need. One is your resume, another is a motivational statement, and then 3 contacts for references. No need for letters of recommendation, but just those 3 contacts that you have. And then by the time that the interview is getting scheduled, they will be reaching out to your contacts via email. After you submit your application, you will be asked to fill out a health history form. So this is really where you get to showcase, or disclose any allergies, food restrictions, pre-existing conditions, or any medications that you might be on. We really want to make sure that we can find a suitable fit for all of our candidates with regards to your health needs. And so this is definitely a great way to move forward in your application as well. The 4th point here is the interview. And that is going to be done with one of our placement officers. So it will be a one-on-one interview, and it's about 60 minutes to 90 minutes long. So very much a behavioral-based interview. But for any of you here who, might already be in the process or getting an interview scheduled, please do reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to have a mock interview with you or kind of showcase what sort of questions that you can expect. Points 5 to 8 is really what I like to call the waiting period. As Sean may recall at this time, is really just that waiting period and getting your checklist items done. The really exciting portion is that receiving that invitation. So by this time you will find out and meet with other invitees who are leaving with you in the cohort. You know, there's going to be a lot of different legal clearance, mostly just a fingerprint cards that they will ask you to send in, as well as some checklist items to do with your medical provider as well. All right. So I know this was a lot of information in a very condensed time, but I do want to just take maybe the next 2 to 3 minutes or so to see if there's any questions. Let me open up the chat box as well. Okay, let's see here. Erica, I do see your question about for the references, do they have to be work related, academic related, or mixed? Great question. So out of those 3 references, 2 of those will be supervisor or academic. This can also be somebody who supervised you in a volunteer format as well. But if you can provide at least 1 supervisor and an academic, or 2 supervisors, that would be ideal. The 3rd one is actually going to be a good friend of yours that can speak highly on your behalf. So just those 3 contacts for references. Joshua, will we be able to bring some of our own money? Most definitely. I think as far if your question is more so about like, should I have a savings before joining Peace Corps, I think if you have enough money saved up to also utilize for your personal travels or any emergency situations, I highly encourage you to definitely have a little bit of savings prior to Peace Corps. But with that said, you know, I think also personally for me, I did not have any savings prior to becoming a Peace Corps volunteer, but I was definitely able to also sustain myself throughout those 27 months. And on top of that, with that $10,000 readjustment allowance, which used to be a little bit lower, but when I was serving as a volunteer, so that also really allowed me to utilize those funds to adjust back into the US. I did get to travel a little bit with that money as well. So there's definitely resources there for you in that sense. Please do keep those questions coming, everyone.
Rachel, I think I believe Grace has got her hand up. So Grace,
Oh, yes.
unmute yourself and you can ask that question directly.
Yeah. Okay. So, so last semester, obviously everything went online and I was looking to apply, and obviously when all the volunteers came back, I just thought it was probably not the best time to apply. So I stopped, but I realized how big of I really like writing and stuff, but I don't know really how much the application weighs in the process, but the physical writing, like kind of your like idea and the project. And I have a couple friends who've been in the Peace Corps, and they were kind of saying how the people that I know who were chosen had kind of these like very specific ways of entry into the community that they wrote about. And so I was just wondering, like Sean or Rachel, just like whether in the 6 to 8 months that you used to apply, were you like formulating this very specific thing? Because I mean, I'm an international relations major and Spanish major, and I really have a lot of ideas, and I don't know whether I should be more general so that, you know, I can apply to, I want to be flexible, or I know Spanish and I'm really interested in this community. And then it's like, you don't get picked because someone else was more flexible who could, I don't know if that's too broad or.
No, that's a great question, Grace. And if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think as far as like the early time period of kind of looking at our projects and kind of seeing what you might be best fit for, is what I'm hearing, as well as kind of like how to be prepared for Peace Corps service during that waiting period. And I guess the main thing about this is that it is really good to be flexible. I think especially in these times of COVID-19, as we're also waiting to hear back from which countries may open up first and how that's all going to look, I highly encourage you to just be flexible with the application. But also it depends what you're interested in as well. If you are interested in, you know, nutrition education, or perhaps you have like a regional focus because you do have a Spanish minor. So if you're looking at some of our Spanish speaking posts, with teaching English to secondary, school education students, or so on and so forth. There's so many different nuances and different ways that you can definitely apply yourself. And during that waiting period, I would say I personally didn't really take on additional experiences to become a better volunteer. Like I think I was working a lot as well, so I just kind of had a day-to-day life like that. But as far as like the technical training and everything, that is really going to take place within that first 3 months of your time as a Peace Corps volunteer, so that really the volunteers will be really well versed and knowing what type of projects that they can carry out and how to work with the community members in that way. I hope that answered your question, Grace, but I'll definitely put my email in the chat box so we can also connect after this and talk more in detail. Great question though, thank you. All right. I think we are good. Sean, did you want to chime in as well on that question?
No, I think that was great.
Okay, wonderful. So let me go ahead and transition over to introducing you all to a return Peace Corps volunteer and also a Torero alum. Just really excited to have Sean here today. This is actually our first time to incorporate an alum into these info sessions, so that really able for you all students to just kind of gain more information and just kind of ask more of those questions of what is it like to be a volunteer in day-to-day life. So I do have some questions moderated, but if we do see the chat box blowing up with questions, I'll go ahead and prioritize those as well. So with that said, Sean, let me go ahead and take you right here. And if you want to just kind of provide us your general info, background info, and where you served, some of the projects that you took on as a volunteer in Panama. Would love to hear all about it.
Cool, yeah, of course. So hey everybody, my name is Sean, and as I mentioned, I'm a USD alumni. I was a Torero from 2010 to 2014, and then I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Panama from 2015 to 2017. A little bit about my time at USD. When I was at USD, I was studying mechanical engineering and math, and really was also interested in international development and was involved with Engineers Without Borders and also outdoor education. I was involved with outdoor adventures. And yeah, after graduating, I wasn't totally sure what exactly I wanted to do. And I ended up applying to the Peace Corps and sticking with the Peace Corps for 2.5 years. I actually extended my service. And yeah, I've come back to the States, and I really loved my experience in Panama, and I have a lot of really great things to say about the Peace Corps. And I could easily talk about it for the next hour, but I'd certainly want to address whatever questions y'all have. So if you do have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat box. So while I was in the Peace Corps, I was also a health volunteer, or a water sanitation and hygiene volunteer. And so coming from a background of mechanical engineering, in Panama, they have a program that's pretty engineering specific, in that we work on water distribution systems or aqueducts. So the main project I worked on while I was a Peace Corps volunteer was this water distribution system. So I was in a community of about 200 people, and there was no running water, no electricity. It was a 5-kilometer hike from the road into the community that I lived in. And so I showed up, and they had this idea of this water distribution system that they wanted to implement in the community. And they knew of a spring in the mountains that they wanted to bring the water from the mountains into the community. But they needed an engineer or someone with an engineering background to help them design that water distribution system. So yeah, that was I worked over the 2 years to realize that project. And I believe it's still going, and we were able to connect over 30 houses to a water distribution system that brought clean water from the mountains, from a spring in the mountains, into the community. And so I guess that's kind of like my primary project. But if you talk to return Peace Corps volunteers, they'll always mention that your primary project isn't really what you spend most of your time on per se. Really, 80% of my time in the Peace Corps was spent just in the houses of community members, getting to know the community members, developing trust. Really, like during orientation, they'll talk about how your whole first year is really just like setting the foundation of trust and building those relationships so that your second year you can actually start to implement whatever project you were kind of assigned to. There are so many things that I would love to say, so I can just keep talking, but something that Rachel mentioned, and I think is really key to the Peace Corps, is that the Peace Corps only operates in countries that have requested the Peace Corps' presence in those countries, and then the communities themselves have to request a Peace Corps volunteer. So the community that I worked in had requested a Peace Corps volunteer 2 years prior to me showing up, and they'd been waiting for a Peace Corps volunteer, and then I showed up. And then once you're there, the community really is generating the ideas of the project that you're going to work on. So you really have no idea what you'll end up doing as a Peace Corps volunteer, because it's really at the discretion of the community members and whatever needs they identify. So yeah, in my case, it was a water distribution system, and I also did a lot of like health education. There was a fair amount of HIV and AIDS in the area that I was working in Panama. So we did a lot of education on HIV and AIDS and other waterborne illnesses. And yeah, you can see here, yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'd love to take questions, but I can also just keep talking about my experience.
Actually, Sean, we're still waiting on the questions, but if you can kind of talk a little bit about the pictures you have here, they're awesome. I would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the picture on the upper left, that was a work day. So the work day is to actually build this water distribution system that I was talking about. There were often 30 plus people that would show up to the work day, and we'd hike into the mountains and we'd dig these trenches that you can see on the lower right. Because the spring that was perennial, or that was always alive, as they say in Spanish, or that never dried up, was pretty far from the community. So it was 5 kilometers from the community as well. So we had to put 5 kilometers of tubes in the ground to bring the water into the community. So we had countless work days, and while we were working, often the women would come and work with us as well. But as you can see here, some of the women would stay behind and cook these massive meals for all of the workers. So you can see here that there's one of the grandmas is cooking over an open fire, and that's how we cooked in the area that I lived in Panama. So you go and collect firewood, you'd bring it back, and that's probably a massive bowl of rice. So we'd come back and eat a bunch of rice, and then sometimes have some beans. On the lower left, there's a photo of me and a bunch of teenagers, I guess. I also was involved with Ultimate Without Borders. So there's an organization that works in Panama that teaches kids and young adults ultimate Frisbee. And through Ultimate Frisbee, they teach leadership skills and collaboration and conflict resolution. So it's a really, really cool program. And I was able to take a team from my community who had, prior to me showing up, had never heard of Ultimate Frisbee. And we would practice Ultimate Frisbee at the school. And then we went to this tournament and met students from all over Panama. And yeah, so that was something I never expected to do in the Peace Corps, I guess, but was just another really great opportunity. And I see a question about the Coverdell program I'm just going to address. So after I came back from Panama, something that Rachel mentioned was that you get access to some of these fellowships for grad school and ways to pay for grad school. So I came back from Panama and applied to the Coverdell program at the University of Arizona and was accepted. So the last, I guess, 3 years ago, I started as a Coverdell fellow at the U of A, and I studied hydrology and water resources. And now I'm actually working for the Department of the Interior. So I'm working for the US government after getting my master's degree. Yeah, any other questions? Some fun things about my time in Panama that weren't expected were, well, one, the community that I lived in didn't have available housing for me because it was a rather small community, and really large families living in big open houses. And there wasn't really like a small house for one person because most families had 8+ people living in them. So I had the opportunity to build my own house, which was a really awesome experience. So we were able to, we went into the jungle because I lived in the mountains of Panama, and we cut down some trees, really like massive trees. Kind of heartbreaking to see them, to cut them down, but then also like realizing that we were building a really small house and it took that much wood. So we cut down some trees and with a chainsaw cut into boards, and then I was able to build a little house that I lived in for the 2.5 years. And how, I think Rachel also mentioned this, but how countries do their living situations differ from country to country. So in Panama, I lived with a host family for the first 3 months. And then after that initial 3-month period living with the host family, I was able to move into this house that I built. And so I lived on my own, I guess, for the rest of the experience. But really, you're never alone as a Peace Corps volunteer in some ways. You're like you're like daycare for the whole community in a way, or at least that was my experience, that like all the kids after school would just like end up on my porch, and like I'd just be watching them if I wasn't doing anything for like the whole evening.
Sean, I do have a question for you from Joshua. He's asking, was it difficult leaving United States and leaving your family?
Totally. And so that was, there were a few things that I was really worried about going into the Peace Corps. And I think the main one was this like sense of isolation. Because as a Peace Corps volunteer, you're often the only Peace Corps volunteer in the community. And so I was really worried about that, like being away from my family, being away from friends, living in a culture that you don't speak the language that well, at least initially. But over time, you just become like what you thought was your family in the US still is your family, but you develop another family in another country. And that was completely my experience with the 2-year timeline, was that I was also intimidated by the 2-year timeline, but after the 2 years ended, and I extended because I wanted to stay a little bit longer and I needed to finish projects, but I wasn't really ready to leave in a way. And it was almost like the reverse. I was like, oh no, I'm leaving like this family to go back to the States, and I haven't seen all these people in 2.5 years. Yeah, so there are so many like unknown benefits from the experience, and many of them are like you become family with people that you can't even imagine, I guess, like exist presently. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Sean. I love hearing your experiences. I think I agree with you. We can go on so long talking more about these stories, and we will make sure that we can do another one of these in the future so that students can hear more from you. Truly appreciate you sharing your stories. And I know that we're short on time here, but I just want to put my information out here for those of you who want to get connected. Sean, if you're cool with putting your info or your email in the chat box as well, if any students want to reach out. And thank you all so much for joining. I understand this is such a unique experience to be in this virtual format. It seems like we're all used to this now, but obviously we love talking to you all, and any questions you may have, please do reach out to myself. And I'll pass it back to you, Diana.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel and Sean. Rachel, that was such a helpful overview of the whole program, and particularly some of those updates on the current situation. And Sean, I just loved hearing some of those stories from bonding with the community to playing ultimate frisbee, that just really brings the program alive. So appreciate both of your time.